There's an alternative timeline where we're all playing with morphers.
That's right.
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, TV shows, music, video games, foodstuffs, and more from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Aaron Dicer.
I talked to him and everything, but he just said that he thought it would be a good idea, and how there's all different kinds of fruits, and well, it's nothing against you, Tracy. I mean, you're the best. I just thought...
Okay, you're on, Mr. Popular.
Hello, everybody. It is Recotopia, episode 138. My name is Chris Atkinson, joined by Aaron Dicer.
Howdy ho, Reese-a-rinos.
Reese Arenos, all right. Today's big recommend is going to be Election from 1999. I would like to acknowledge chat. Thank you guys for coming out. Even James came in and said he saw Audition based on my recommend last week, and he very much enjoyed it, and he pointed out some things that, yes, are very, very good about that film. I highly recommend it for people who can tolerate a little bit of visceral violence, just a little bit, but it's visceral. Anyway, I guess I will start us off with our small recommends.
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
And I am going to start off with what I guess was the flavor of the week this past week, and that's Woman of the Hour, the Anna Kendrick directed and starring movie about a contestant on the dating game who ends up choosing who nobody knew at the time was a serial killer, had killed many women before he had gotten on the dating game. His name was Rodney Alcala. But this is Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, and I tell you what, man, she does a lot of great stuff in this that I'm hoping that she enjoyed this experience because I want to see more out of her in the future. There are some very suspenseful moments in this. The movie's kind of told basically from it's told from her character Cheryl's perspective, and it's basically the lead up getting into the dating game, and then it's interspersed with flashbacks of Rodney seducing or at least attracting women to be with him, and he sort of goes under the guise that he's a photographer, and these women are vulnerable and they're willing to go along for the ride, and then of course things turn really scary after a while, but the movie keeps flashing back and forth all the way until the point where he ends up being a contestant on the dating game and what she does after that. Now, if you had heard the story or if you went and researched it later on, you know that it's not completely 100% accurate. I don't even know how close to accurate it is. There was a lot of stuff I had heard this story before, so I was like, kind of like some of the things I was like, I don't think any of this happened, but that doesn't have, that's what most of these movies are anyway. So if you can get beyond that, the fact that it's not the 100% real story and that this basically happened, good movie to watch.
I have mixed feelings on this movie. I will say I completely agree that Kendrick is one to watch. I think she is really talented and doing some really great work with the way she's using the camera, the way she's using the actors. I think there's a lot of really good stuff here technically, and I, like you, want her to do more because I think she's super talented. The performances in here are really great. I think Daniel Zavato, I believe is his name, who plays Rodney Alcala, is menacing and kind of perfect for what the movie needs him to do. I think Autumn Best, who plays a runaway in the movie.
She's a standout.
I almost stole the movie for me. She's so good in this movie. And actually kind of leads to some of my mixed feelings, which is I felt like the movie was so much stronger when it was in the zone of of telling the story of the serial killer. And it was almost like the dating game stuff, which is the hook, I guess, because that's weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird that in real life this serial killer went on the dating game. Like that's a really interesting hook. But I think, unfortunately, it kind of muddles this movie a bit. Like it feels a little messier than it needs to be structurally and story-wise. The timeline can get a bit confusing, I think.
Yeah, it does.
It's weird too because the Kendrick character feels like the protagonist, and yet that part of the story isn't really the story the movie is telling. So I like it. I just have mixed feelings on it, and I am super excited to see what Kendrick does next because I think she's super
absolutely.
talented.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up some of the things that even I was like, and I just kind of forgave them. But like one of the things that that these serial killer movies don't do very often is they don't usually tell the stories of the victims. They usually are from the perspective of the serial killer. And so, that's something that's come into sharp focus over the past few years while all these Ted Bundy and Menendez brother, all these type of things that keep coming out are, they never focus on the victims whatsoever. And that's what they are in the movie. They're victims. They don't have a real story behind them. So anyway, I guess watch this movie knowing that there is some things to be cautioned about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick off my first small recommend with a recent movie as well, but one I'm just getting around to, and that's Transformers 1. I wanted to chat a little bit about this one. This is another one I have some mixed feelings on, but this is definitely a recommend because this is just a really solid movie watch. It's just and it's nice to see a franchise that just takes a swing with world building and some kind of, because it takes place before all the Transformers stuff we see on Earth. This is kind of how Optimus Prime became Optimus Prime-ish kind of thing. And it really, really works. And I think a lot of the reason for that is the way the story is told. I think it's compelling. I think the voice performances are really good. There are a lot of voices that you're going to know in this. Chris Hemsworth plays Optimus Prime, which may seem like an interesting choice considering how iconic that voice is. But, this is a very young Optimus Prime. Brian Tyree Henry plays Megatron. Scarlett Johansson is in here. Steve Buscemi is in here. John Hamm, Lawrence Fishburne. So a lot of voices you're going to recognize doing good work. But it's also Josh Cooley directing it. And if you don't know that name, Josh worked closely with Pete Best at Pixar and doing Inside Out, and then directed Toy Story 4. So he definitely has a good sense of animated storytelling and all that stuff. Now, the mixed feelings are that a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense to me, and that's unfortunate.
Okay.
Like there's like I don't understand. I thought Transformers came to Earth and were trying to hide by looking like cars. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong in that, but I don't know why they look like cars and jets on their own planet. That doesn't make sense to me. It also adds an element of who can transform and who can't, and so that's a little bit weird to me in a new part of the world that I'm not sure completely makes sense. But I understand it story-wise, and ultimately I'm a story guy, and so the story part is the one that I focus on. But I think it's really good and worth a watch, so I wanted to recommend it.
I've heard enough good about this that I want to watch it. This did, I think, okay at the box office. It wasn't a huge hit. It wasn't like that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that came out, was it last year, that everybody was raving about, but like it did decently, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were kind of confused because we're in a regular run of Transformers movies, like live action. And so that and because the live action movies like don't have much discernible from animated movies anyway, like that's just probably looked like another the Transformers 6 or 7 or whatever to a lot of people. So, and that's
one of the other annoying things about these movies, the Michael Bayification of the Transformers, is that they don't transform, they morph, and that's always annoyed me. I want it to be like like I want to see how the arm becomes the front of it, but no, it's just like, it's all.
There's an alternative timeline where we're all playing with morphers.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
My second small recommend was a movie that I had not seen in forever, but I loved back in 1999. Talk about, 1999 has gotten a huge sort of retrospective this year because of the 25-year anniversary and how many great films came out. There were a lot of movies that came out under the radar in 1999. One of them was Stir of Echoes, which came out in the sort of the shadow of The Sixth Sense, because The Sixth Sense came out in August, and I believe this movie came out either in late August or early September or something like that. And yet again, there's another kid here who can see dead people and stuff like that. But it's not really about the kid. It's more about Kevin Bacon, who is skeptical that his sister can hypnotize him, and of course she does. Sister played by Ileana Douglas, who I love. And she does successfully hypnotize him. And after his hypnotization, he starts seeing things that are like, sometimes they feel like they're kind of things in the future. Sometimes they feel like things that are something that's happening to him, but they aren't really. And he keeps seeing this ghost played by Jennifer Morrison running around the house. And so he becomes obsessed about figuring out what's going on in this neighborhood. And this movie has some nice scares to it. I love the story of it. David Koepp, who was a Jurassic Park writer, I believe, directed this movie. And very brisk, very fun, very well done mystery kind of story. It's a horror movie, but mostly it's a mystery of what went on with the Jennifer Morrison character, and I highly recommend this movie. Had not seen it in a long time.
Yeah, I'll throw a recommend for this one as well. It's a really well-paced thriller, and it gives you the information you need to stay invested in and to have a good time with it. I watched this for the first time 5 months ago. So,
oh, wow.
It's interesting how movies can get buried because of other movies, and I really do think that this got buried because of the Sixth Sense phenomenon.
It definitely did. Yeah.
So I think it's worth rising this one from the dead, so to speak, for you to check out.
Absolutely.
My second small recommend is a documentary. I'm full into documentary season right now. We have our documentary awards before our overall awards, so I'm just like knee deep in docs right now. But this one came out on Netflix, and a lot of people have been watching it. It's Will and Harper.
Oh, yeah.
This is a documentary about Will Ferrell's receiving a letter from a best friend from his Saturday Night Live time that was a writer on the show. They did a lot of stuff together and basically received a letter from this person that they were transitioning, and they were a woman. And it is about Will Ferrell's experience with that. He's really honest about questions he has about how does this change our friendship? How does you being a woman change the way I relate to you? Like how, and so he decides to, they decide, I should say, to go on a road trip together and visit very specific geographical places that mean something to them. And they go from New York to LA all the way across and stop at different places along the way. So it's kind of a road trip documentary between two friends catching up and having conversations about how the world is different. And overall, just a beautiful look at what it means to listen and love someone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we all could do that a little bit more as opposed to the closing ourselves off and judging people.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's got a real great heart to it, and I would recommend it.
And I think people have pointed out, I haven't seen this yet, but I think people have pointed out having someone like Will Ferrell be the subject here is important, because he's been a part of all sorts of like rude comedies and things like that, things that get to a certain audience that people might, hey, I might watch this with Will Ferrell in it and learn some things along the way that I had never thought of before, and things like that. So having someone like him here instead of like, George Clooney or somebody like that we know as a hyper liberal person or whatever, like I think it it means a lot to have him be the main guy here. So
I will also say it's funny too. I think Will Ferrell is a naturally funny human being. In fact, I like real life Will Ferrell. Sometimes even more than like movie actor Will Ferrell, where it's dialed up so much. But he's really funny, and it's he's not afraid to make jokes with Harper, and at one point asked Harper if she's a worse driver now because she's a woman. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, all right.
So it's really. I think it feels honest to me, and I think that's really important. It just feels like an honest look at their relationship in this trip. So it's good stuff.
Yeah. All right, on to our big recommend.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
And that is Election. Also from 1999, also basically overshadowed that year by so many movies. This came out, I think, not that people watching The Matrix or anything were like, I'm not watching Election because I'm a Matrix person or something like that, but it was kind of in the shadow of The Matrix and Star Wars and all this stuff that was coming out. It came out like in between those, and it kind of got buried in 1999, and it's gotten a little bit of a following since, I'm certain, but I will go on and start talking about this. Election is Alexander Payne's second feature after Citizen Ruth. It is based on a 1998 book by Tom Perrotta. This movie starts with high school teacher Jim McAllister, played by Matthew Broderick, running in circles. It looks like he has a general routine every day, and nothing is going to ever stop this never-ending, boring cycle until it is rudely interrupted by aggressive table leg extensions from the fierce, determined Tracy Flick, played by Reese Witherspoon, who is getting an early start campaigning for class president. Mr. McAllister's routine is also interrupted by a full faculty fridge, which he cleans out to make room for his own lunch. He throws a box of Chinese food that misses the trash and makes a mess on the floor, much to the dismay of the passing janitor. Enter one of the many narrators in this movie, as Tracy, speaking from the future, says, "Nothing would have happened if Mr. McAllister hadn't meddled the way he did." Whatever this event is, Tracy is clear that he messed with destiny, and the only thing that happens to people who mess with destiny get destroyed. This narration coming over a sweet, innocent-looking, and lonely Tracy Flick sitting at her campaign table. McAllister then narrates, acknowledging that whatever the big event is, it has to do with the election. He mentions that he was a teacher and he loved doing it. And we see how involved he is with the school and the students. He's won Teacher of the Year 3 times, and he's proud of being able to teach kids about the tough ethical and moral decisions that they'll face as adults. However, he seems to treat Tracy differently, even going as far as not calling on her in class, even though she's the first and most eager one with her hand raised. Eventually, though, he has no choice, and as Tracy answers a question about the difference between morals and ethics, we are given a quick montage of Tracy Flick's domination of the school yearbook, in which she appears on roughly 20 pages. But her main focus is student government, where her real passions lie. Then we are given sudden whiplash by one more detail. Jim's friend and fellow teacher Dave Novotny, played by Mark Haralick, knows some very intimate details about Tracy that he details graphically, revealing that this married teacher is sleeping with a student and is, of course, using his power over her to take full advantage of it. Tracy puts on her rose-colored glasses, declaring that she and Dave's relationship was based on mutual respect and admiration. As a viewer, you can decide whether this is true or not, but the images tend to belie the narration, especially when Dave seduces Tracy to the Commodore's 3 times a lady with a crib of Dave's newborn visible in the background. Dave believes that he and Tracy are in love, but this affair is quick to end as Dave's message to Tracy asking her to go on a Hawaiian trip with him is discovered by her mom. Principal Hendricks, played by Phil Reeves, asks him if he crossed the line with Tracy, to which Dave more or less confirms. He's fired, and his wife Linda, played by Delaney Driscoll, divorces him. Now that's a lot of information given to us while Tracy tries to answer a question about morals and ethics. The bell rings during her answer, a bell which Jim is eager to acknowledge, and we can see the first wave of disappointment washing over Tracy when it comes to a teacher she admires. Her narration confirms this, and she says that she feels sorry for a guy who's constantly running in circles. We are also told that Tracy's mom, played by Colleen Camp, is a huge influence, and it is more than hinted that she's living vicariously through her. Tracy flags down Mr. McAllister to verify the signatures she collected to become class president. But there is definitely an uneasy relationship between the two that only gets uneasier when she suggests they'll be working closely with each other over the next year. Is she a mad seductress looking to destroy men? Anyway, Jim doesn't understand why Tracy is so gung-ho when she's going to easily win the class presidency, but she tells him that Coca-Cola, despite being far and away the #1 soft drink, also advertises more than its competitors. Later, we see Jim throw away Tracy's signatures in the movie's continuing trash theme. We now get a chance to look at Jim's home life and his wife, Diane, played by Molly Hagan, and it appears his life at home is as routine as his work life. While watching a porno and drinking a Pepsi, Jim remembers what Tracy told him about Coke and gets the idea to introduce a competitor to the race. Paul Metzler, played by Chris Klein in his debut, is an ultra-popular kid who was once a football star with absolutely no ambitions whatsoever. Paul recently broke his leg skiing, which means he's not doing anything that's going to take up much time. And Jim believes he's a worthy candidate to stop Tracy in her tracks. He gives Paul a lesson using apples and oranges to demonstrate the beautiful power of choice. Paul also mentions he likes bananas, which serves as clever foreshadowing. Tracy sees Paul getting signatures and realizes immediately he poses a threat. It doesn't take her long to figure out that Mr. McAllister is behind his candidacy. It's revealed during the narration that not only is Paul popular, but he's got another advantage: wealth. His father owns a cement company. Paul drives a nice truck while Tracy takes the bus. We see Paul go home, where he barges in on his sister Tammy, played by Jessica Campbell, and her potential girlfriend, Lisa, played by Frankie Ingracia. Lisa is getting uncomfortable with her kissing sessions with Tammy and tells her she's done. We are given flashbacks that show that Tammy was always a little more interested in a romantic partnership than Lisa was, and that she made Lisa more and more uncomfortable as their friendship went along, mainly because Lisa wasn't ready for a public romance. She fears for her reputation. Immediately after this, we are once again smashed with new information. Lisa is giving Tammy's brother Paul oral pleasure in the next scene, and it does seem like she's doing it to either get back at Tammy or at least strongly affirm her reputation as a straight gal. Paul and Lisa become boyfriend and girlfriend, and she helps Paul with the student council election. Their romance inspires Tammy to be the banana in this election. Very publicly, she starts running against her brother, and despite a very suspect campaign, she appears to have gotten the signatures she needs to run. The movie shifts to Jim and Diane, who have been helping Linda, Dave's ex-wife, after the divorce. During the narration, Jim reveals that he and Diane have been trying to make a baby, but it's been a whole year and they haven't been able to conceive. Jim seems kind of attracted to Linda, and he often goes to her house alone. They start spending a lot of time together. There's a point where he makes a pass at her by asking if she wants to get a room at a sleazy motel, but she's not ready for that smoke and shoots it down immediately. During the evening, Jim has sex with his wife and imagines not only Linda's face on top of his wife's head, but also Tracy's, which makes his thrusting more vigorous. Jim says, "So, like I was saying, things were going pretty well in my life." All the student government candidates show up to the gymnasium to make speeches to the students. Tracy's speech shows that she takes this very seriously. Paul's speech is read directly off a card and is rushed through with no emphasis or meaning and no punctuation, and people don't even know what they just heard, but he's popular, so it doesn't matter. And Tammy's speech, which begins, "Who cares about this stupid election?" reveals that she doesn't give two shits about the presidency, and she promises to do jack shit if elected. Her maverick speech is actually super well received by the student body. However, her actions get her suspended for 3 days, and she's threatened with expulsion if she screws up one more time. Tammy goes to Immaculate Heart to watch the girls play soccer to celebrate. One night, working late at the school, Tracy tries to fix a new banner she's put up, but the tape just never sticks, and her attempts to get it to stay eventually leads her to falling and accidentally ripping it off the wall and ruining it. When she sees a poster for Paul, she goes ballistic on every single one of his posters. Once again, trash is going to be featured heavily in this movie as Tracy drives to a distant spot to throw away the damaged posters, not knowing that Tammy is nearby to witness her cover-up. The day before the election, Jim is helping Linda with her plumbing, literally and then figuratively. Once again, we see an affair unfold in the view of a baby crib, and this time there's an actual baby there. After their tryst, Linda suggests they go to that sleazy motel after his workday. The poster scandal leads to the candidates being pulled into the teacher's lounge. Jim tells Tracy he thinks she did it, despite Tammy being the top suspect. Jim starts winding up his gotcha speech, explaining to Tracy that people like her who go above and beyond and at any cost are going to be taken down eventually. He then crosses a major line by talking about Dave's affair with Tracy and that she's lucky no one knows about it. But Tracy's not one to take it, telling Jim that teachers like he and Dave Novotny shouldn't be leching after their students, and then throws a barb at Jim's inability to conceive with his wife. She even mentions with authority that her mom is a paralegal at a big law firm. The shock is interrupted by Tammy, who says she knows for a fact who tore down the posters, giving a somewhat subtle glance in Tracy's direction. Tracy is worried her political career is over, but Tammy pulls a big surprise and confesses instead. Tammy isn't convincing, but she pulls out the torn posters that she retrieved from the trash from her backpack, and Mr. McAllister has to begrudgingly accept that Tammy was the one who did it. Jim's attention quickly shifts to motel sex with Linda, and he gets prepared for it during school hours, handing the kids a pop quiz, leaving the school, buying stuff at Walgreens, getting the room, and scrubbing himself up. But when he goes to pick up Linda at her house, she's not there. And even worse, Jim gets a bee sting right in his eye. Being allergic to bees, this causes his eye to swell. Tammy's parents yell at her for all the trouble she's caused, and they tell her that her punishment is sending her to Immaculate Heart. Tammy smiles about her good fortune as her dad yells at her for it. At the motel, Jim keeps trying to get a hold of Linda to no avail. He's been stood up. After many hours, he goes home to find out that Linda has confessed to Diane. Now we go to a series of people looking to God for answers. Jim looks to the sky. Tracy prays, nay insists, to win the election. Tammy, who does not believe in God, basically prays for Lisa to understand what an asshole she is, among other things. Paul, the most sincere prayer out of the group, prays mostly for Tammy, but he also thanks God for his big penis, too. On to election day, the students are told that Tammy Metzler is no longer on the ballot. The votes come pouring in. When Paul votes, he thinks it's wrong to vote for himself, so he votes Tracy. Jim tries to call Linda, and she finally answers, but she's at the point of no return. She now feels like Jim took advantage of her, and whatever spell she was under, she's not anymore. When Jim returns to the classroom, he asks the students who won the election. But the by-the-book election chairman, Larry, played by Nicholas DeGasto, is insistent that Mr. McAllister count the votes first to ensure an independent count. Larry, we're not electing the fucking Pope here. Larry reveals that Tracy has won by one single solitary Paul Metzler vote. Jim is disappointed but proceeds with his count, which he's about to confirm until two things happen. One, Tracy's election worker bee, Eric, gives Tracy a thumbs up while she is outside spying to indicate she won the election. And two, Jim notices a happy Tracy jumping around in the hallway. Jim is now more determined than ever to make Tracy pay, so he quietly crumples two of her votes and throws it yes into the trash. Now he tells Larry they have a problem. They get Principal Hendricks to verify the count, and it appears that Paul is the new president. Larry is more than upset about this perceived mistake, believing without a doubt his count was correct and all votes were accounted for before Mr. McAllister did his count. It's revealed, even though it doesn't matter to the outcome, that the number of disregarded votes in the election actually exceeded both candidates' votes, meaning Tammy would have been the winner. Before the announcement, Tracy gives Paul a line of shit about running a great campaign in an effort to look like she's got class, even though she already knows she won. She then stands up before the winner is announced, but is stunned to hear Paul's name called out. And while Paul accepts the win, Tracy is heartbroken. That night, Jim tries to reconcile with his wife, who closes the door in his face. He spends the night in the same sleazy motel. The next day, Jim is invigorated, believing he can get his life back on track. But as soon as he walks into the principal's office, he discovers that his wrongdoing from the previous day has been uncovered. By the janitor, no less. Paul is informed about the two trashed votes, and Jim is forced to resign. The movie's ending shows that Paul is totally okay not being class president because his popularity still gets him elected homecoming king and prom king, and he threw a bitchin' Mexican party at his dad's cement business, and he eventually gets into the University of Nebraska. Tammy goes to Catholic school and meets a girl named Jennifer. Tracy rules the student government with an iron fist while killing it at school and getting into Georgetown. But she does lament her lack of friends. Finally, Jim moves to New York and works at the Museum of Natural History. He's got a new girlfriend, and we're told that he sees Tracy one more time when he travels to Washington. When he sees that she's already become quite successful, climbing into a limo with a congressman, he throws his drink at the limo as it drives away. He doesn't know if she ever saw him. Finally, the movie ends with Jim taking kids through a tour of the Museum of Natural History, where Jim once again tries very hard to fight the good fight. After asking a question about the difference between igneous and sedimentary rocks, he once again finds himself in the position of trying to ignore another Tracy Flick type girl with her eager hand up. And that is how the movie ends. Aaron, what did you think?
I love that the movie ends with anyone, Bueller.
Yes.
Which I think might have been intentional, because there's also the shower. There's a couple like Broderick in the shower things that also felt very like reference to Bueller.
Yep.
I really like this movie. I'm hit or miss with Payne. Mostly miss when I kind of look through his career, but the hits are so good for me. Like this and Descendant are two of my favorites, or The Descendants, or I forget exactly what it's called.
It's The Descendants.
The Descendants, yeah. So when he's working for me, he's really working for me, and I just think a lot of that has to do in this movie with this script is so good. Like it's not just that the dialogue is fun or that the characters are quirky and interesting and well drawn and you know who they are. It's also that the setups and payoffs are kind of next level in this movie. There's several good examples of just great payoffs in this movie. One is the moral versus ethical conversation, and the final payoff, which it's like 10 minutes later or something, when his friend says, what's the difference? It's just so perfect. That kind of stuff is so perfect. There's the apples and oranges stuff, and bananas, I think is really interwoven nicely. You mentioned a lot of that stuff. Even later, the Chris Klein character picks a banana from the fruit bowl that has apple, oranges, and bananas.
And it even has, I think, pears like hidden underneath down there too.
Nice. And even like the big final moment is a huge payoff right from the beginning with the janitor. Like that's a really big fun payoff. Like you don't even. It's handled so well at the beginning, where you think you're just getting character information on this guy that is trying to do his level best, but is, actually causing more trouble than he thinks he is. And the look from the janitor of, I can't believe you just, threw that Chinese takeout on the floor. And then he walks off. And there's just a quick flashback at the end to that Chinese takeout on the floor. And, it's just that choice. That one little miss of the garbage can may have gotten him fired, or gotten him caught, I should say. So yeah, just a lot of really cool setups and payoffs in this that I really, really like. I also think the editing it almost feels different than most other Payne movies to me. It feels a little more Wes Anderson-y sometimes, a little more like I think of the stuff where when she sees Chris Klein is running, and it uses the track that Tarantino later would use in Kill Bill, where it's like, or whatever, and it's so perfect. And it's just funny. It's just really, really funny and knows what it's doing. Another example of how it knows what it's doing and how this script is so smart for me is how subtle some of the commentary is and the satire is, especially at the beginning when we're talking about this teacher who is sleeping with a student, and you'll hear like the Broderick narration say things like he was mostly a good guy or whatever.
Right. It's just like, yeah, exactly.
And just after like
that. Well, let me break in just for a second
Sure.
here. One of the things that I was going to mention in the recap, but I decided to take some things out and everything. But there's another implication that this movie doesn't directly come out and say, and that is McAllister doesn't come out and say, tell somebody about this.
Right.
He's just allowing this to happen.
Right.
His friend is openly telling
Right.
him the most gory details of this affair, and he could easily just go to a principal or something. But no, it has to be that her mom finds the correspondence and then whatever. So that immediately puts Jim McAllister in this bad moral dilemma that he's in.
Yeah.
And you should be paying attention to that as something about his character early on in the movie.
I think it's, again, that some of that subtle stuff, like even when he's introducing this in narration, when he's introducing Tracy Flick in narration, he starts by saying she had gotten herself into some trouble. Like he's putting the onus on her. Like this is a terrible thing to do, like to victim blame in that way. But the movie is so subtly sharp about it that it's a whole nother level of kind of satirical writing that I just think really works for this movie. There's another example where Tracy Flick is narrating, where she says she's talking about why she would have this affair, what she's calling it an affair, and says, you might think it's because I didn't have a dad, but it's not that. It's just he was so strong and made me feel protected.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's so smart, because like it gives you an insight to the fact that this young woman doesn't understand what's going on, and it is wrong. It is immoral because she has no concept that it actually is part of the father figure thing that he is playing on and manipulating her with. And I just think the movie is really smart with all the way it handles that. Add to that Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick maybe have never been better than they are in this movie. They're both so good in this. I think she was like 23 when she played this role, and
if not younger. Yeah.
And she's just so good at playing that type A personality, overachiever, try hard is what people would say today, which is an annoying phrase to me. But yeah, just kind of that personality is so good. And there are few actors I think that can pull off the schmuckiness of Broderick can. Like he's just he's so good at poor schmuck. Like it's just I just love it. I love what he does. He's it's very similar to Cable Guy. I think he's got a lot of these kind of same things going on, where the world is just happening to him, and he is just trying to figure out why. I love it. I think he's so great. I also find it interesting that this is MTV Films, which the story goes that Alexander Payne didn't want to just do a teen comedy, and MTV basically told him, no, go ahead and make an adult comedy. And I think this is a really interesting cognitive dissonance between like MTV Films and then this, high art.
It seems very incongruent when you see the logo of this thing and you see the movie after. Yeah.
Another thing I noticed at the beginning that I'd never noticed before, when Tracy Flick is setting up her table and it's doing the leg slams, there are 5 leg slams.
Oh, really?
Yes, there are 5. We went back and watched it again. And it's almost as if Alexander Payne is saying she is so emphatic that she found a leg on this table that didn't exist and put it out as well. Like it has to be purposeful, right? Like it's not like an accident that happens. So I thought that made me smile when I saw it this time. I read a little bit about the newspaper text of the article that I wanted to share. There's this plays into our job as sins writers on Cinemasins, but like the text of the newspaper says, if you've paused the film in order to read this entire article, your time would be better spent renting Citizen Ruth from your local video store. Do you know how hard it is to write these fake few stories for newspaper movie props? I've got better things to do. Perfect. Sin removal. I like that's
exactly.
That's great. So yeah, I thought that was funny as well.
And even in the commentary, which I didn't see for this podcast, but I had seen it a long time ago, and the commentary on Election is fantastic. He was talking about how when Jim calls Linda and the phone hangs up, he says, "Now look, listen to this. When she hangs up, it's not a dial tone on the other end of that line. It just hangs up.
There
There's
you go.
whatever." And so you can tell that even though he's jokey about that in the newspaper, and of course Cinemasins didn't exist in 1999, but you can tell that he's kind of got a Cinemasins flavor inside of him. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I would end by asking you a question, because I was thinking about this as I looked through Payne's filmography. What of Payne's movies do you think feels most like Election? And do you sense the same thing that I do, that Election kind of stands out as a different type of movie for him from the rest of his filmography, whether it be because it was early on and he grew away from it or whatever? Tonally, it feels a little different to me than the rest of his filmography.
Right. His next one after this is About Schmidt, which I believe if you were to start there, everything is about Schmidt, and it's like that from that point forward. They're mostly dramas with some like kind of comedy in it. I guess you could say dramedy if you wanted to do that type of thing. But the most like it is Citizen Ruth, which came out before this, and I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I actually haven't.
But that is a movie in which Laura Dern is pregnant, and she is being accosted by both the pro-life and the pro-choice sides while she's deciding what she's going to do with her baby. Now, it's more than a little outdated, because the pro-choice side, they want to kill that baby. They want, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not really choice in the movie, really. I mean, I need to see it again, but there's a big, huge cast in it. It's a pretty funny movie, but it's pretty outdated too. I mean, to put the pro-choice side into that category, then you're just trying to make it an even movie at that point. But Citizen Ruth is the closest to this movie, no doubt about it. Everything else is like About Schmidt, really, when it comes down to it. So,
yeah, that's kind of the sense that I get, and I miss it. This is one of my favorite movies from him. I think there's a little bit of it in The Holdovers, but I think even The Holdovers feels like the majority of his filmography. And I love The Holdovers, by the way. That's one of the Payne movies that I really, really love.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how people kind of grow into who they want to be as a director, and then there are some kind of as an audience a little bit of lamenting, like, Election is really good and really funny. I kind of miss that tone a little bit.
Yeah, there's a few things that I just constantly go back to on this. First off, I want to shout out Reese Witherspoon, who is a Nashvilleian, and I get the sense that some of her life in this movie was her life while she was in Nashville, because she went to Harper Hall, and I am almost certain she was an overachiever of some sort while she went to that school and everything. And I've never read one way or the other, but I have to feel like she really knew this character. If she wasn't this character, she knew this character when she was doing it, because it is one of the most fully realized performances that she's ever done. So definitely want to shout her out on that. I love Chris Klein in this. I don't know what exactly, because this is his film debut, and I'm pretty sure Payne is probably like, this is how you want to do this and whatever. Don't worry about like being a great actor here. I just want you to just do these things. When he's doing his narration, everything is like a I don't know, it's like a huge surprise, the way he just randomly says, well, it was a big surprise when I took Lisa home and she was just there blowing me, and this out of nowhere. And then there's and every day we would go home to fuck and have a hot tub. It was just like it's very stream of consciousness what he does throughout the whole thing. And so like everything about his character, there's a debate in the chat as to whether who's really good in this movie. Or like I think he is a pure soul in this movie. He's he has little like foibles, but like not anything where he's actively trying to hurt anybody. I don't think anywhere in this movie. And then some people might say that Jim's wife is another one that's like maybe wholly good in this. But we don't know enough about her. She's not really in the movie enough for us to really know.
I think we're supposed to like several of these. I think Tammy too. I think both the Metzler siblings both have a real innocence to them. Even though Tammy is, clearly a, rebel or whatever, like we want her to find a place where she belongs. And when she smiles that her plan has come to fruition and she gets to go to Sacred Heart or whatever, like that's, I think as an audience, we're supposed to really be on board with that. So, yeah.
I mean, certainly all the characters have their likable traits or whatever. And like, Jim, I don't know. He's the protagonist of the movie. Do you end up liking him by the end of this movie?
No, I think Jim is the exception in that I think we're supposed to, despite his, the world crumbling around him kind of in this movie, I think we're supposed to understand that he is the problem.
Yeah.
And that as ambitious as Tracy Flick is, she's not the problem.
No.
When she finds out that Paul is running against her response isn't to cheat or to try to get him out. Her response is, okay, let's go. I can beat you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think Jim is the problem here. And I think the movie, again, even subtly is telling us that the whole time.
Yeah.
Everybody around him, other than possibly Linda, who, does seduce him, everybody around him is, I guess, both the Novotnys. Dave also is clearly a terrible person.
Yes.
But yeah, everybody else is kind of trying to figure out who the best version of them can be in this world.
Right. And the movie, it does the same trick on the opposite end with Tracy Flick, because she's the antagonist of this movie, but she's a victim. She's such a like a victim of a lot of things. Not only the Dave Novotny thing at the beginning, which is just, it's like, that's a horror show. I don't even know if you could do this in a movie today, have that kind of relationship told so matter-of-factly as it is in this. But also at home, her mom is just, I mean, we don't get to see much of her mom, but we see these little microaggressions and things like that. Like maybe if you had given out a couple more cupcakes, I don't know, and these type of things that she's clearly driving her daughter to be this super overachiever and everything. And in the end, what is she doing wrong? She's not trying to, stomp on anybody. Now, McAllister, who's in this routine life every day and whatever, and will never achieve big things and all this other stuff, sees this happening and he wants to destroy this weed right off the beginning. I think this movie is just absolutely fantastic in how you perceive who the hero of it is by the end of it. Not very many movies can do that, and especially somebody who has got the kind of nice guy baggage that Matthew Broderick does. He's the hero of Ferris Bueller, even though you can also say he's kind of a dick in that movie too. But we know him as Ferris Bueller and everything, and now he's the authority in this. And it's kind of just a neat magic trick they do with these two characters. So, yes, I have. This movie is just like I just love it to death, and I also love the fact that the pick flick on the cupcakes and the buttons looks like pick fuck. Was done on purpose, obviously, and I love that. So anyway, that was another good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, the chat is rightly bringing up that she did tear down the posters. She did make a mistake there, in a moral choice or whatever,
yes,
and should have come clean about that. That's true.
That is one thing for sure.
So that's worth mentioning as well. But I think overall the movie is trying to say something very clear about the McAllister character.
Yes.
And everybody else is just a part of that swirl.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing too. I love all of that irony about everything concerning the election. The fact that Paul votes for Tracy and not himself. It's almost like if Jim had just found somebody just the slightest bit more ambitious, he would have never run into this situation where he feels like he needs to pocket 2 votes or throw them away, obviously. And the fact that the third candidate would have been the winner in all this, kind of a comment on humans in general who are like willing to be like, who are willing to vote for somebody who's willing to tear it all down instead of like keep it up and everything. And just, just general dislike of someone like Tracy, who's like this do-gooder and everything. And it's like, we hate that in society, and she is thoroughly punished for it. But of course, by the end of it, she's getting in a limo with a congressman. So, maybe she does end up winning it.
Maybe.
All right. Let's go on to our super secret double feature.
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
I looked in a lot of different directions on this. I thought about tone. I thought about kind of the satire angle, and that's kind of where I landed. High school satire. I think Heathers is a nice 1-2 punch with this.
Very good.
It feels very similar to me in the over-the-top nature of the tone and deals with issues of teenage sexuality, all sorts of things in a comedic and over-the-top way. This is mostly about the students, so there isn't necessarily the McAllister stand-in, but it just feels like a good 1-2 viewing experience to watch these movies.
Clearly a great super secret double feature for this. Heathers is the one that could easily see being a big recommend at some point. Talk about another movie you probably can't do today, considering all the things that they go through in this high school and everything. But these are 2 very young hot stars at the time. Like Winona Ryder I think she's like 17 in this, maybe even 16 in this movie, and Christian Slater is like 19. I think he's very young in this, and it's like just a huge like career coming up for the next several years for them after this. Heathers is a great choice.
Plus, it has one of the greatest lines of dialogue in cinema history with "I love my dead gay son."
Yes,
just so good.
It's awesome. It's so good.
I love my dead gay son. So good.
Oh my God. All right. What is next week's homework, Aaron? We will actually be doing this on election day when we do our next one. But what is the next one? Not to color the choice that you make here, but what do you got for us next week?
Well, like I said, I am in kind of full documentary mode, and it had me thinking about one of my favorite documentaries of all time, which is what we'll go with. And I guess you could say there's a little bit of politics for sure in this documentary. I'm going with The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters for the big recommend next week. I love this documentary, and I've been itching to go back and see it because something happens with some great documentaries that are like right place, right time documentaries, which I feel like this one is. Where they just happen to capture in the moment some insane things happening in the world of Donkey Kong scores. And so I kind of want to go back and see if it was just the audaciousness of what was happening, or if this movie is really, top notch technically as well, because it's just been a while since I've seen it. So, but I remember just absolutely loving it when it came out.
This is a great movie to watch. Since this movie has come out, so many things have happened, especially with Billy Mitchell, who's a very litigious guy. And right now there's a lawsuit. I don't know if it's still going on or not, but YouTuber Carl Jobst is being sued by Billy Mitchell. And just because of some very innocuous things. I don't know how in the world you would win a case. Why even could get the case in the first place. But there's a lot of things even this documentary doesn't know by the time it's over. There's so many other things that happen afterward.
It almost needs a sequel.
It does.
It almost needs a sequel.
It really does.
But yeah.
But I'll be looking forward to watching this again. This is a really, really good documentary, and if nothing else, I did not realize that Donkey Kong was such a complex game when I was playing it as a kid. I didn't realize that there are like so many different things that you can do to like get points and to make certain things happen in the game and whatever. So yeah, that's, if nothing else, it's a fun delve into old video games and how people played them to get high scores. So, all right. That's going to do it for this week. Once again, chat, thanks for bringing it today. You guys were lively during the discussion on election there. Really, really appreciated that. There was one question that came up, and I had thought about it the same thing just before we sign off here. One question that came up in the chat was, do we think Jim did not clean up the Chinese food after it fell onto the floor? The movie is saying that he didn't.
Correct.
But
yeah.
But it's weird to have him just throwing stuff in the trash, and then he just moves the trash out of the way and then leaves the Chinese food on the floor.
Yeah.
It's the one possible flaw of this movie, plot flaw of this movie is, first off, you have a janitor that's that insane about looking into people's trash and stuff. But the fact that just throwing the Chinese food and I guess I'm not cleaning that up, and I guess the janitor was around to see that too. Was probably one of the biggest flaws of that movie. Anyway, thank you, chat, for bringing that up. I was going to bring it up myself, and I had forgotten. So, anyway,
how do you leave those votes in the trash can? You just rigged a student election.
I know.
After everybody leaves, you are burning those votes.
You know what
is going on?
I take it back. This movie sucks.
That's right. Terrible film. Terrible film.
I'm gonna write up Alexander Payne after this and be like, I was raving about your movie until I got to the Chinese food part.
That's right.
Anyway, that's gonna do it for this week. Thanks again, chat. Next week will be The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, and we will see you next time. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com. This is a weird thing that's happened. So I went to go see at our local plays and musicals and such venue, TPAC. I went and saw Mr. Ballin, who I've recommended on this podcast to go. He's got a YouTube channel where he tells stories of the strange, dark, and mysterious and stuff like that. And he has a live show that I went to go see. And then we were I'm with my girlfriend, and we're in the lobby, and there's a standee for Moulin Rouge, which was going on at the time. And we had talked about it before, but I didn't get tickets for it. And while I was in the Mr. Ballin show, I just went ahead and got 2 tickets for Moulin Rouge for the next day. So we went to see Mr. Ballin. The next day we saw Moulin Rouge. And then this past weekend, I was already set to watch King Crimson play. I think they're playing under the name Beat because they may not be able to use King Crimson, but it's basically King Crimson. So I was already set to watch them last night, and then a friend of mine halfway during the week last week was like, hey, I've got tickets to Toad the Wet Sprocket and Bare Naked Ladies. And I was like, all right. So back-to-back nights, I went to the Ryman Auditorium and watched 2 concerts. And yeah, I'm kind of tired. I'm like ready to not do anything for a while, because it's just like I've done stuff. I've been out. I've done things. I feel good about myself.
Yeah, similar experience with being over in the UK and stuff, and getting back and just being like, you know what? It's okay to be just sitting on my couch.
Yeah, exactly.
I always get so drained when I go do stuff, and I kind of like to just be in my cave and, you know, absorb energy that way. But I still do it because there is nothing like experiencing something in 3D space, whether it be a show, a concert, a cliff in Ireland, whatever it is. Like, there's just something that's worth it to be somewhere and see something. There's no technology that can emulate what it means to actually stand somewhere and be in that moment and have that experience. And the older I get, like, experiences become more and more valuable and prioritized. It's just like, because I think that's where life is. I don't know. It is. So yeah,
it is. I was talking about this with somebody a couple years ago. They're talking about, like, you know, is it money that makes us happy or what, you know, those type of things. And I said, man, one thing money can get you are experiences, and experiences are extremely valuable. I don't think the money itself does. You know, like, money itself, you can see how many people out there actually have, like, all the money in the world and are just unhappy. And you're just like, why are you unhappy? Why could you ever be unhappy? And to me, it's either a lack of experiences, or they're being thrust into experiences they don't want to have, or, you know, I don't know what it is, but I think experiences are definitely a life need or whatever. And it doesn't have to be awesome experiences. It has to be things where you go out and hang out with people, have good conversations, have a good dinner, whatever, those type of things. You know, it doesn't have to be amazing.
Yeah, I've heard recently a couple people in different instances say, treat the city you live in like you're on vacation sometimes. Like, treat your own city as a tourist. Like, you're coming there for the week. Do a Google search, see what the cool stuff to do around your town is, and go do it. And I think there's some real value there. But yeah, I think what happens with a lot of people's disappointment with money or fame or whatever they're going after is that was the goal, right? Like, in their mind, that was the thing that was going to answer all the questions they had. And when they get there and realize, oh, that doesn't actually do anything other than put more zeros in my bank account or put more eyeballs on me because people know who I am, then it just becomes, oh, well, what is? So there's a lack of, or a misunderstanding of priority, I think, sometimes when it comes to the pursuit of wealth or whatever it might be.
It's sort of, you know, sort of the message of mo money, mo problems, right? Like, where it like, yeah, the money gives you the chance to afford anything you want to do, but it seems like everything that you have that involves having the money and keeping that money involves a job of some sort that you weren't prepared for. That, you know, like, there's something in there that makes you, you know, that you have to, you have to do that you don't want to do out of all of this. So you thought that it would buy you freedom. It doesn't. It buys you more stuff to be concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not blind to the privilege that my wife and I had to save for 18 months or whatever we did for this, trip to the UK. Like, not everybody could even do that over 18 months. Like I'm not blind to that there is a privilege aspect to being able to vacation and do things like that. But like you said, I think there are experiences around us all the time. And we were having experiences when we had 4 kids in a 700 square foot home. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter. My experience has been in my own life. that there are always opportunities to find cool things to do and cool things to experience.
Yeah.
No matter where you are in life. So yeah, definitely would recommend.
But yeah, that's a good idea. Taking a vacation in your own city, basically, where, like, okay, I know my way around this place, but you may have just like skipped past some places that are, hot spots and for whatever reason, and you've never tried it out before. That's why I feel like when I was in New York, I always wanted to go out and do all this stuff, and new people in New York were all this touristy stuff. I was like, yeah, but have you ever experienced some of this stuff? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, well, okay, well, that's here. It's here for a reason, It's not here just for tourists.
Why would I go out to Ellis Island and see the Statue of Liberty? I see it every day, Yeah.
Right. There are people, of course, who made those trips when they were growing up in New York and stuff. That was a field trip or whatever, so they have seen it a million times. But still, some people haven't. So,
if I lived in New York, first of all, speaking of money, I would have to have lots more of that because it's very expensive there. But I think I would spend most of my resources on shows. I think I would just see a different Broadway show every week because there's always short runs of some cool thing where really great actors are coming to do something awesome. And that's the one attractive thing to me about the big city is the live talent that you can go see all the time.
I wish I had been more in tune with how to acquire Broadway tickets and things like that when I was there. It's not as easy as it is now where you can just get on there and like, I would like to go see Hamilton and you just go to a website. And you may have been able to do that back then. That was 2006 though, 2006 to 2008. And it always felt like you had to go to like certain places, like the TKTS place that's in Times Square to get them. And so I wasn't as in tune with those things back then. But man, I wish I had been now because I would have been all over it at this age, going to the Broadway shows.
Yeah, the first Broadway show I ever saw was Fiddler. It was 93, and we were on a senior trip from Michigan to New York or whatever, and it blew my mind. I was like, it had a rotating stage. Can you imagine? There was a rotation on the stage. Now you watch some of these stage shows, and they just do miracles with that kind of stuff. But it really blew my mind.
The rotating stage thing reminds me. It is October 29th when we record, so this is a time for maybe one more horror story. There was a thing, it was like Disney World or Disneyland, whichever one it was, had a rotating stage for something that they came out with back in the 70s or 80s. I think it was the 80s, actually. And there was this new hire that got onto this thing. And I guess some of the jobs you do on this stage are you're make sure the crowd is good or, make sure things are clean, whatever it is that they're supposed to do. I don't think they're actually performing. But one of these hires for this show where there's a rotating stage where like all the audience gets to see all these new little scenes and everything, apparently had this little tiny space behind it that you could accidentally get into if you were not paying attention or whatever. And then there was like nothing but the little thing that rotates the stage around that was there. And like this one girl got stuck behind it or whatever, and it kept moving all the way throughout. And she was screaming, but nobody could hear her.
I just Googled it real quick. That was July of 74. That was 1974. Okay. It was Deborah Gale Stone. She was an 18-year-old brand new employee, just started working there at Disneyland, and it was the America Sings attraction.
Okay, yeah,
and
right.
The ride had been open a week, and her death closed the attraction for 2 days. And then they were
2 days.
2 days. They replaced the carpet, and they were back up and running.
I'm wondering like what the news cycle was on that thing back then. 2 days after, and you got people coming in. All right. I mean, I guess they didn't hear about it or they just didn't care about it. I don't know.
There is something about like, it's hard for us to understand how news traveled before the internet, like how slowly and incompletely it traveled before the internet. And even before that, before radio waves or, television, like there was a time, just a century or two ago where you just didn't know what was going on unless Tom Hanks visited your town to read a newspaper. You know what I mean? Like it was.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that happened today. That place would be probably just shut down. Just never. It would not be that anymore. They would have to break. They'd have to tear it down and put a ride there or something like that.
An alternate universe where Disneyland. Like when did Disneyland open? Was it late 60s or was it early 70s?
I think so. I think that's right. Well, it was maybe the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think it was either the 50s or the 60s. One of the things in the book L.A. Confidential they're talking about is the creation of Dream a Dreamland, which is clearly a Disneyland thing. I believe, and that was set in the 50s. So I think it's late 50s, early 60s.
1955 looks like is when it opened, July of 1955. So yeah, it'd been open about 20 years. But I was just thinking of an alternate universe where Disneyland is shut down forever because of this thing, and just life as we know it is completely changed. Universal owns Marvel and Star Wars.